Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Marty Ross, and this is another Conversations with Marty Ross MD tonight. It's a nice sunny day here in Seattle. We've actually been having quite a bit of rain here, but it's good to see that the sun has come out. Hopefully, we'll get into our summer here eventually as well. For those of you that are new to the webinars tonight, the way that these webinars work, you get to create them. In fact, you create them with your questions. How you can do that is there's a chat box over on the right-hand side of the screen, down at the bottom. You write your question there to me. I post them as they come in, and I probably won't be able to get to everybody's questions tonight, although last week I did actually, but I'll try to get through as many of them as I possibly can. I ask as you write your question that you only hit the enter key at the end as you complete your question. If you try to hit the enter key to create different paragraphs while you're writing your question, the difficulty is it creates multiple questions on my side, and it gets very difficult for me to manage. During the webinar tonight, I will be making a recording. Tomorrow morning, you'll get an email from me saying that that recording is available as soon as I have it edited and put together to be shared with people. And that usually is before somewhere around 6 o'clock in the morning Seattle time. Yes, I do get up very early, or sometimes around 9 o'clock East Coast time, actually. Okay, so take a look for that tomorrow morning. It should be in your email. Tonight, I will be doing some screen shares, so you'll be able to see different resources that I want to share with you. One of the things I'll be showing you is the Treat Lyme book, which is, many of you know, is my Lyme disease information site that I call the Treat Lyme book. One thing that you should be aware of is that there's a variety of free resources I have there, but a lot of the site does require a subscription. I ask that you do that subscription. When you do that, you support these webinars that I do for free for people. And also, you support my ability to create more information. And lately, I've been in a little bit of a stall on that. I've been having to redesign the website to get it to be a bit more functional. And there's some more design work I still need to do on that. I don't pay designers. It's actually me that does it. So it takes a little bit of time to get that put together. But you may even be seeing further updates on how that site looks over the next week or two as I try to get it to be a bit more presentable and a bit more functional for people as well, too. To those of you that are coming back again, I'm glad to see familiar faces, and I'm glad to see that you find these things, this webinar, to be helpful for you in your journey recovering through Lyme disease as well, too. Okay, so let's see. I've got somebody saying they can't get sound. Any suggestions? Let me make sure if there's anyone else having problems here. I don't see that anyone else. CJ, you posted the question about can't get any sound. I would probably check on your end because it does appear that I'm not having that as a problem from other people. You might want to check your setup on your computer to see if you have your sound turned on, okay? But it does appear, from my end, it looks like we're getting sound out, and I'm not seeing that anyone, somebody else just wrote and said we have sound. So CJ, I would take a look at your computer to see if you can get that figured out, okay? And I hope you can get that figured out. If not, well, I guess I can't give you any more advice. You can't hear me. Anyhow, that's where we are. So let me go. Oh, one more thing. Tomorrow morning, I will send out in the email tomorrow morning, I will give you notification of the next set of webinars, which will be in July. I haven't decided yet of the week of July 3rd, which would be normally when I would begin the series. So I'll take next week off. Normally, I would begin another series of 3 that first week in a month. But that being July 4th week, I may not do one. I may be off for 2 weeks, but I'll make that decision tonight. But you will get a link so you can sign up for the next series of webinars, okay? All right. So with no further ado, I'd like to go ahead and get started. One more thing. I will post if you're watching this live, you will see that the question is posted on your screen so you can read it. To those that are listening to a recorded version of the webinar, unfortunately, you're not going to have that as an option. So you're going to have to listen to me read the whole question. So let's go ahead and get started here. Hello, Deborah. Hi, Dr. Ross. My wife is attempting to transition to antimicrobials from antibiotics after 2 years of treatment for Lyme, Bartonella, and Babesia. Do the antimicrobials damage the gut? This is the main reason to get off antibiotics: gut damage. Mahalo. Mahalo back. I love the Hawaiian term mahalo. So I think by antimicrobials, what you mean is herbal antibiotics, or some people call those antimicrobials. So in terms of the gut, one of the problems with prescription antibiotics is that they decrease good bacteria that live in the intestines. And that change of decreasing good bacteria in the intestines is something that can even continue up to about a year or so after you've been on prescription antibiotics. I will tell you that same problem can happen with herbal antibiotics as well too. Although it doesn't seem to happen to as great of a degree, but I do still see it as a problem. So to answer your question about that, okay? So if many of you are looking for options that I have that are herbal options to kill Lyme and to kill Babesia and to kill Bartonella, you want to take a look at 3 articles that I have written. And in those articles, I include both prescription options to kill Bartonella, Babesia, and Lyme, but I also include herbal antibiotic options as well too. Let me just do a quick screen share. I'm going to show you how you would find that information, okay? So bear with me here. Okay, let's see. Let's go there. All right, so I'm in the Treat Lyme book. This is the website, the Treat Lyme book. Take a look at the chapters tab up here. You can see I'm just kind of gone over it here, okay? And if you look in the infection treatment plan chapter, you're going to see the various plans I have to treat any kind of infection, okay? So for instance, there's an article called Kills Babesia, a brief guide. You can see it there. Kills Bartonella, a brief guide. And then also a Lyme disease antibiotic guide. I just renamed that from Kills Lyme Germs to a Lyme disease antibiotic guide, so it's easier to find when people search for antibiotics to kill Lyme. Take a look at those 3 articles. You're going to see in all 3 of them that I actually do have herbal options that you can use to kill those germs, okay? All right, let me go back here again. All right, so just take a look at those later, okay? The one about Lyme disease antibiotics is a free article. You will need a subscription to read my thoughts on Babesia and Bartonella treatments. And again, I would appreciate if you would support the work that we're doing here. Thank you, by the way. Deborah, thank you for that question, and I hope that gives you an answer there too. All right, good luck to you. All right, let's see. This next one is from Kelsey. Hi, Dr. Ross. Does Banderol or Cemento touch Bartonella? I read that NutriMedics thinks Banderol might. Okay, so Banderol and Cemento, everyone, are products made by NutriMedics. Banderol is an extract from a tree called the Otoba tree that comes to us out of South America, and Cemento is cat's claw. All right, so it's their version of cat's claw. Those 2 herbs have got some good Petri dish experiments that show that they kill all 3 forms of the Lyme germ, not Bartonella, but the Lyme germ, okay? And regarding Lyme, they can remove 100% of biofilm. So I love that 2 herb combination for killing Lyme, okay? For killing Borrelia, the Lyme germ, all right? However, I don't find them to be useful for treating Bartonella. And in fact, as many of you know, if you've listened to my webinars long enough, I don't like the Cowden protocol. I don't think it does what it purports to do or what it proposes to do. I think the best part of the Cowden protocol is Banderol Cemento. I think they work for the Borrelia infection 85 to 90% of the time, okay? But you will do better if you follow the successful treatment recipe approach, which is my Lyme disease guideline, and follow the recommendations I have in addition to killing germs. Most of those things in a successful treatment recipe help you recover from Lyme. And I think Cowden is too focused on germ killing. He doesn't do enough to support the body to detox and to do all the other things. And regarding detox, also, I don't think that Cowden and Pinella and Berber do a decent job. There's other things that I recommend in the successful treatment recipe that do better, okay? So I'm often asked, what do I recommend? Well, take a look at the successful treatment recipe. It gives you the background and the pieces you need to do to recover, okay? Now, regarding Bartonella, I just disagree with Cowden. I think the only thing that Cowden has in it that might work against Bartonella is Houtunia, the herb Houtunia, okay? And I don't like using it by itself. I actually like to take Houtunia as an herbal option for Bartonella and combine it with another herb that you can find out of the Buhner herbal protocol. And that herb is called Sida acuta, S-I-D-A, second word, A-C-U-T-A. I write about them in the Kills Bartonella, a brief antibiotic guide that you can find under the infection treatment plans that I showed you earlier. But I don't find, I think that Cowden does a lot of stretching about how useful his protocol is. And I think his claim that the Banderol might help with Bartonella, I think is a bit of a stretch, actually. The two herbs of Houtunia and Sida acuta, in my experience in treating for Bartonella, work about 80 to 85% of the time. I'm sorry, 75 to 80% of the time. I think that for Bartonella, we're better off actually going with prescription options, and I outline those in that article as well. Okay? All right. Thank you, Kelsey. I appreciate that. All right. Let's see here, Deborah. Let's see. Hi, Deborah. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Russ. I just had an organic acid test done from urine, and it showed high for creosol, a byproduct of C. diff. 0 symptoms that I'm aware of. Would you treat? And if so, with what? I have foot neuropathy to consider. I've been on Biotoxin for a year now with Mepron, 5 months in GSC. What should I do? All right, so I wouldn't treat. I'll just start by saying that, okay? So C. difficile, Clostridium difficile, C. difficile, is a bacteria that lives in all people, actually, even if we don't have problems from it, okay? So C. difficile is a normal bacteria that lives in our intestines. When you're on antibiotics, sometimes it can grow too much. And if it does, I know that may sound strange. It is a rare bacteria that when you're on antibiotics gets worse, okay? So it's called C. difficile. And the problem it causes is when it grows too much, it makes a toxin called C. difficile toxin A and toxin B. Okay, we really get creative with those names. And the C. difficile toxin opens up the intestines, the cells that line the intestines, to release water back into the intestines, and you just get these bad watery diarrhea, okay? If you're not having any symptoms of watery diarrhea, that means that you probably are not making too much C. difficile, and probably what's being measured is just a normal background noise that all of us have. We all have C. difficile that lives in us, okay? So I wouldn't treat. If you are concerned, a simple thing you could do that could help is to actually take a supplement called Saccharomyces boulardii. Saccharomyces boulardii, also known as Sacro-B, that's S-A-C-R-O, a second word B, the letter B. Saccharomyces boulardii is a normal yeast, a healthy yeast that lives in the intestines and has scientific evidence that shows that it can help put C. difficile under control or even treat C. difficile if we get too much of it. I like using a thorn product called Sacro-B. And usually if I have people that I have a concern of C. difficile, I may have them take 4 of the Sacro-Bs 1 time a day. But I'm not advocating you do that. I don't think that you have a problem here, okay? All right? So I hope that answers your question, Deborah. Good luck to you. So the one thing that Deborah's question raises with me that I'll just make a point of before I open up the next question is that we shouldn't ever treat a test. Okay, tests can be wrong. So even if that test came back and maybe it is from C. difficile just normally inhabiting your intestines, sometimes testing is wrong, okay? And so the predictive value of a test, the ability of a test to truly indicate something is there, goes up with the number of symptoms you have of that illness, all right? So if you don't have any symptoms of an illness and you have a positive test of the illness, there is a high probability of a false positive test, okay? So a test is only as good as the symptoms you have suggesting the illness, all right? So that's for any kind of testing. That even means Lyme testing, okay? So I often get asked the question, if I have a positive Western blot and I don't have symptoms of Lyme, should I treat? And I usually say no, because it may be a false positive test, okay? Again, if you don't have symptoms of an illness, a positive test has a high probability of being a false positive test, okay? All right, let me go back here. All right, hello, Abby. Let's see, what is your opinion on ultraviolet light blood therapy for Lyme? My LLMD just started incorporating this, but wondering if it will help chronic Lyme. All right. So ultra UV light blood therapy, high dose vitamin C, hydrogen peroxide, and ozone are all forms of a type of treatment called oxidative medicine, okay? So oxidizing agents, oxidative medicines, work by damaging the membrane of germs and the DNA of germs as well too. The problem I have with those treatments is they may also damage our membranes, okay? Now, our cells are set up to handle oxidative medicines because we make antioxidants. Germs, on the other hand, do not have a good supply or do not make antioxidants, and so they can't recover from the damage. That being said, I don't agree with the idea of using oxidative medicines long term because I do think that over time they can cause damage to cells, okay? Our own cells, that is, all right? So I don't like using them. I do think they may give benefit in the short term, maybe a course of about 4 to 6 treatments, but I have major safety issues using them for more than that, okay? Secondly, I don't find they work that well, right? So people that get oxidative medicine treatments, I find get help maybe about 40% of the time. It is something I might consider if somebody's not doing well on a regular either herbal antibiotics or prescription antibiotics, I might consider doing it. But it is not something I would build treatments around because I don't think they work that well. Secondly, I think there's too high of a rate of chance of having injury that occurs to us by using these over time. Okay, that's my opinion. All right, thanks for that question, Abby. All right, hello, Jim. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. Hello back. Can high biotoxin derivative from real-time labs be because of candida and not mold? Okay, so I think what you mean by biotoxin derivative is something called gliotoxin. That's gliotoxin. So real-time labs, everyone, is a lab that looks at urine and can test for 4 different kinds of toxins. One is called aflatoxin, another one called ochratoxin, something called trichosethine, which is black mold toxin. And then finally, they've just started reporting in the last months another type of toxin called gliotoxin, okay? So this is based on urine testing, all right? Aflatoxin, ochratoxin come from a type of mold called Aspergillus, all right? Trichosethine comes from black mold toxin. Gliotoxin can come from a number of water or wet building molds, but it's also produced in candida, all right, so yeast. So your question is, could it be coming from candida? Yes, and not mold? Yes, it could be. And so I usually, when I get an elevated level back of the gliotoxin, I'm not necessarily thinking it's something I need to go ahead and bind. I'm often going to wind up asking a series of questions to figure out if my patient has an active yeast infection in their intestines as well too, all right? So let me show you where you can figure out I'm gonna give you a resource here that you can take a look at later to help figure out if you might have too many yeast. All right, so I'm gonna do a screen share here again, everyone. All right, so this is, I'm back in the Treat Lyme book again. I'm going to look in the chapters, and there's a chapter I have called How to Diagnose. You'll find it in this section called Lyme Disease 101, all right? And there is an article that I have about a silent problem. Do you have yeast? This is it right here, okay? So take a look at this later and read it. I give you steps to figure out if you have too many yeast living in you. And in that case, is it too many yeast, for instance, triggering your gliotoxin, okay? All right, let me go back here again. All right, thanks, Jim, for that question. Good luck to you. Okay, Brenda. Hi, Brenda. You asked the $1 million question, and Brenda's question is there a cure for Lyme? That's a hard question. So the answer is, if you get treated, there's 3 parts, okay? There's 3 phases I'll address. I believe that if you get started on a Lyme disease treatment within the first month of when you got your tick bite, the tick that gave you Lyme, if you get started in the first month on a 3 to 4 week course of antibiotics, I think we can cure it. That's if you get treated in that first month. If you get treated beginning 1 year or more from when that tick bit you that gave you Lyme. Now notice I'm not saying from when you got Lyme symptoms. I'm saying from when you had your actual tick bite, the tick that gave you Lyme. The trouble is most of us, 50% of the time, people don't remember even having a tick bite and they have Lyme. Okay, but if you can remember it, if you start getting treated a year or more after that, I don't think we ever get rid of the Lyme germ in probably 90% or more of people. All right. So in that situation, no, we don't. The best we're doing with antibiotics is to knock it under control so it's not having such a severe problem for people, all right? Then there's the gray zone. That's the people that start getting treated between a month and 1 year from when they got their tick bite. And I think that there's a number of people in that group we do cure. I don't know what the percentage is, and I'm saying that based on experience, okay? But I think that there are a number of people in that group that we are able to cure. In that group, so the people that we start treating in the first month with a decent course of antibiotics, or that group that's 1 month to 12 months after their bite that we start treating, I like to treat until people are completely symptom-free for 2 months before I stop the antibiotics, okay? I think that gives the best chance of not having a relapse and totally knocking out the germ, all right? So, yeah, I'm sorry to tell you that, but yes, I don't think we cure it in people that we start treating a year. In other words, I don't think we knock the germs out, but we do get the germ down to a level that is not having the bother on the body or causing dis-ease anymore. And we can do that 90% of the time if we start treating you a year or more after you've gotten treated. All right. All right. So let me go ahead and thank you for that question, Brendan. Good luck to you. All right. Let's see here. Hello, Latasha. Let's see. Is having multiple tiny red dots on the skin be a sign of Babesia? On 16 drops of crypto twice a day, and I keep noticing more and more red dots on my skin. So Babesia can give a rash that looks like a blood red, that color of red spot, and it looks like it's under the skin. It can look like little blood breakage under the skin, okay? As opposed to Bartonella, which can give like pimple red rash, okay, rash that look like pimple, okay, but like looks like little blood blister under the skin, or little bright red, the color of blood, bright red spots, is something that you can see with Babesia. And often as you're starting to treat Babesia, it may occur more. I'll see an experience like that, okay? Crypto, everyone, that Latasha is using is something called Cryptolepis. So that's Cryptolepis. Cryptolepis is an herb that we can use to treat Bartonella. Another herb that we can use to treat Bartonella is called artemisinin. These days, artemisinin, I'm tending not to use on people that get their Babesia on the East Coast. Buhner, as in Buhner Herbs, and Horowitz, who's written about Lyme, both are experienced. They don't think artemisinin works out well for Babesia these days, but they're both more East Coast based. Out here on the West Coast of the United States, where I am, I still find Babesia, if you get it out here, that artemisinin works well. But as an alternative, there is Cryptolepis. You want to dose it. I think you're underdosing, actually, Latasha. I usually will dose it at 5 milliliters, which is a teaspoonful, 3 times a day. That's how I treat Babesia when I'm using the Cryptolepis, all right? And everyone, you get Cryptolepis from a company called Woodland Essence. You can Google them. You'll find them on the internet. You can order it directly. Just as when we use prescription antibiotics or prescription anti-Babesia medicines, it takes 5 months usually to completely get over Babesia, whether we're using prescriptions or whether we're using a Cryptolepis like you are here. Okay? All right. Thanks for that question, Latasha. Oh, everyone. The other thing I would tell you is Latasha says that, yeah, she's getting these red spots. I want to let you know they can also occur in aging as well, too, all right? So if you're trying to see if you have Babesia, just don't consider whether you have the red spots. You have to look and see if you have enough symptoms of Babesia. So in terms of looking to see if you have enough symptoms of Babesia, let me do a quick screen share here. So in terms of, take a look again at the article that I have, look under the chapters. And in the chapter called How to Diagnose, which you'll find in the Lyme Disease 101 tab, there is an article that I have about how to diagnose Babesia, okay? And so take a look at the how to diagnose Babesia. Yes, this is one of those articles that does require prescription or subscription. And so when you get this window, it means you have to subscribe. So just click on the ticket and you've given the pricing options that you have, and then literally click on one of those and figure out how it is that you want to pay. But again, I appreciate if you would support the work that we're doing here, and that's how you would wind up subscribing to it. Okay. All right, let me go back here again. All right, thank you for that question. All right, so let's see here. All right, hi, Jan. Let's see. Hi, thanks for your webinar. You're welcome. I have had Bart, Bab, and Lyme for 9 years, and I was wondering, when I get a blood draw, my blood comes out black. Any thoughts? You know, I don't have any thought. I'm not quite sure what that means, Jan. I just have to leave it at that. I've got some remote ideas, but I think they're really more hypothesis than, and I don't know if they're relevant or not. All right. So I haven't seen it occur in these type of infections before, so I'm not quite clear why that's happening. All right. Thanks, Jan. All right. I'll get rid of that. Hello, Brenda. Does your treatment cater to the different strands of Lyme? So, Brenda, I think what you mean by different strands is the different forms of Lyme. Okay, that's how I'll phrase it. All right. So that may be what you mean. You may also mean the different strains of Lyme. Okay. So let me address both of those. Okay. So Lyme, the Lyme germ, can exist in you in 3 forms. All right. So there's something called a spirochete. That's the corkscrew-looking thing. We also think that the spirochete can morph, can change into a form that moves inside of cells where it loses its covering. That's called intracellular Lyme, okay? And then there's a third form of the germ called a microscopic cyst form. There's some people that are starting to wonder if that microscopic cyst form may actually be a piece that breaks off of the spirochete, but for now I still identify them as 2 separate forms, all right? So yes, the treatment protocol that I have, the successful treatment recipe using Banderol Cemento or using prescription antibiotics as part of doing that addresses all 3 forms of the germ, okay? Then there is also the fact that we think that Lyme, there's many different strains of Lyme, okay? And so, which means, and that would, so yes, in terms of the strains, the types of Lyme, it will address all those different kinds of strains too, okay? So there's Borrelia burgdorferi is one, Borrelia afzeli is another one, Borrelia, there's a whole bunch of other ones. Those are the strains, okay? Yes, the treatment protocol, the successful treatment recipe will work against all of those as well too, okay? All right, thank you for that question. All right, so everyone, the treatment protocol I have, you'll find on the treatment protocol tab at the Treat Lyme book. I'll just go ahead and show that to you here real quick. All right, so this is the treatment protocol tab. I call the treatment guideline that I developed, I call it the successful treatment recipe. All right, so you'll find it in the treatment protocol. It's our Lyme disease treatment guideline. It includes all the essential steps that anyone should do throughout their treatment, okay? I'm just gonna show it to you here real quick. All right, so everyone should take steps to make sure you're getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep. I give you some suggestion approaches that you might wanna take here. Getting sleep helps your immune system work better and also lowers inflammation chemicals called cytokines, okay? Second thing I'm recommending these days is that people try a paleo-type diet. The reason I recommend trying a paleo-type diet is that it doesn't have much in the way of sugar in it, so you don't feed yeast, all right? Because when you treat Lyme with antibiotics, even herbal antibiotics, you may get too many yeast, so this has a low yeast diet. It also, being on the high fats and the proteins supports your energy factories called mitochondria. And because this diet relies on lots of vegetables, it's rich in antioxidants that can help you with detox, okay? So take a look at my recommendations on diet there, all right? So you'd have to click on this best brain inflammation, pain, energy, and detox diet ever. Okay, it is a free resource, all right? Third thing you want to do in your Lyme disease treatment, that's part of the treatment protocol, is lower cytokines. Cytokines are inflammation chemicals made by your white blood cells that can help you, but they can hurt you. And if they're made to too big of a degree, they hurt you. So I give you recommendations here on lowering them, all right? Third thing you want to do is be on an adaptogen, something that helps your body deal with stress, okay? Fifth thing you want to do is treat your correct hormonal problems, and I tell you how to do it here. The sixth thing you want to do is be on a good multivitamin. Seventh thing you want to do is if you happen to have too many yeast living in you, you want to get rid of them. I tell you in this section how to identify if you have too many yeast. For instance, you can click on this yeast screening questionnaire to figure out if you might have too many yeast, okay? And I also tell you what to do for them. Number 8, treat your Lyme germs. Number 9, take some basic detoxification steps, and I tell you how to do that here. Number 9, treat your co-infections. Number 12, exercise. And then number 13, part 13 is the interesting section. This is all the things to try if the core treatment approach that I outline here is not helping you get better by 6 to 9 months, okay? So take a look here. This is the steps that you would want to follow if you're not getting better, all right? And the last thing I'm going to point out is that many people start doing better with their Lyme treatment and then they stop doing better. So if you're doing better and then you decline, I talk about the need to make sure you don't have too many yeast, okay? So 80 to 90% of the time that I see somebody doing better and then they have a big decline, it's because of too many yeast. And I talk about that here in this section, okay? All right, so let me go back here. All right, so there you go. I've mentioned the treatment guideline a number of times. I just wanted to quickly show you, and those steps are all essential, okay? So let me go back here. All right, so hello, Benny. Let's see. Thank you, Dr. Ross, for the webinars. Any thoughts on the use of Dapsone for persister Lyme risk? Okay, so probably in the next weeks, I'm going to be putting together. I'm actually not it. Probably in the next week or two, I'm going to be writing some new articles about persister Lyme and what I will call persister state Lyme, okay, and various options you might want to consider for it, okay. So there is a type of cell which is known as a persister cell, and we know that that can exist in the world of tuberculosis, and there's been some thinking that it does exist in the world of Lyme, okay. And there's so what probably a persister cell is, it's a Lyme germ that goes into a state where it's just not growing rapidly, and therefore it may not be responding to the antibiotics, all right? From the world of tuberculosis, we know a drug called Dapsone can help with that, okay? One of my colleagues, Dr. Richard Horowitz, has done a recent research that he published, I think maybe about a month ago, where he took a small number of patients in his practice that he thought had persister Lyme, and he put them on Dapsone. And what he was able to show is about 23% of those people had significant improvements after they started on Dapsone, okay? Now that's based on a very small study, and so I don't know if we know if it's going to hold up over time, if it will work. There's been research on Petri dish and test tubes that show that if you do use Dapsone for Lyme, that you can get it to go away. And in the Petri dish or test tube experiments, they would use Dapsone with a couple other antibiotics, and then they would stop it, let the germ grow back again, and then they would use the Dapsone with other antibiotics again. And they did that a number of times, and they were able to show that you could completely eradicate it, okay, get rid of it. The problem is on any of these experiments where you start and stop antibiotics, we don't know what the ideal frequency is to do that in humans, okay? So is it being on these treatments for 2 months on, 2 months off? I'll do that sometimes. I will do my pulsing as a 2 month on, 2 month off, and I get great results that way. Or is it pulsing every week, 1 week on, 1 week off? Or is it pulsing 1 day on, 1 day off? We don't know. And if you start reading about pulsing, you're going to see all kinds of people have crazy regimens that everyone's coming up with pulsing these days. And the truth is, we don't know if over time, does pulsing do any better than continuous use? All right. We know in test tube experiments, pulsing seems to make a difference, but we don't know the ideal regimen of pulsing, starting and stopping antibiotics in humans. Okay. We just don't know. So also in the next week or two, you'll probably see an article coming out from me on pulsing antibiotics, which will say, we don't know the ideal frequency, nor do we really know if it works any better than continuous use antibiotics. We don't know. Those studies haven't been done in humans, okay? But Horowitz's study would suggest that Dapsone can help 23% of people that are not getting better any other way that he postulates have persister Lyme, all right? And we'll have to see if that is something that holds up over time. Is that something that we can replicate when most of us start using it in our patients? And right now, I don't know. It's too soon to say, okay? So, yeah, in terms of risk, I don't know enough to answer that question in terms of risk. I'm not aware of any major ones. It's another antibiotic, just as in any antibiotic has certain risk. I don't think there's any major ones here. But again, I think it works, according to Horowitz's work, maybe about 23% of the time. All right. Anyhow, look for, I will have a more comprehensive article about this coming up as I review it a little bit more. And also an article about pulsing will be coming out in the next week or two as well, too. Okay. All right. Thank you for that question, Benny. Hello, Brenda. Let's see. What is the average time frame before a patient will see some results from your treatment? So not just from my treatment, but from any treatment. There's an article I have called Risk and Odds, and I talk about in that, or a chapter called Risk and Odds. And in there is an article about how the odds, what is your chances of recovery? Okay, I'll tell you about it here real quick. Okay, so first of all, whether you use my protocol or whether you use another protocol, on average to recover from Lyme is about 2 years. All right, that's the average. All right. In terms of how quick do people start turning around, whether it's with a successful treatment recipe or other ways, on average, by 3 months, 30% of people start seeing improvement. By 6 months, 60% will start seeing improvement, and by 9 months, 90%, okay? So even doing great things, it takes time to turn the corner, all right? So I just want you to know that, Brenda, all right? All right. Good luck to you. Thank you for that question. All right, let's see. Hi, Linda. Let's see. I unknowingly had chronic Lyme when I became pregnant with my daughter, now age 21. She was recently tested using Igenic Labs, which showed that she is IgG positive but IgM negative for Lyme and negative for all co-infections. Can a fetus acquire her mother's antibodies in utero? And could this be... Let me see if I can find that second part to your question, Linda. Hold on. Here's the second part. And could this be the reason she has positive test result, or is a positive result conclusive evidence that she has the bacteria in here? What is the difference between IgG and IgM, and what does it mean to have a positive IgG but negative IgM? Okay, so let me talk about that. So when we do a Western blot test, we're looking to see if your immune system has created antibodies that attach to proteins found on the covering of the germ, okay? And in terms of antibodies, we look to see if we have antibodies from two families. There's a family called IgM that you talk about here, and there's another family called IgG antibodies, all right? So in any infection, the acute antibodies, the things you develop first, are always IgM antibodies. And in all infections, it appears, except Lyme, those IgM antibodies will go away by around 6 weeks to 3 months, and they get replaced by IgG antibodies. Once you make IgG antibodies, they don't go away. All right, we keep making them in the majority of infections, and they serve as the memory of the immune system. So they will remain active if a germ is still in you or if a germ is out of you. So when somebody gets back a positive IgG test result, the best we can say is they've been exposed to Lyme, but it does not tell us whether that germ is still in a person or not, okay? All right, so the fact that your daughter has IgG just tells me she's had it in her. It does not tell me whether it's still in her, okay? Now, IgMs have a peculiar situation that happens in Lyme. Remember I said that in Lyme, IgMs can remain positive. And this is something I see about 80% of the time when I diagnose somebody that has Lyme and they've had the infection in them for a year or more, they're still making IgMs. All right, they're not supposed to, all right? That's not supposed to happen, but that is what appears to happen 80% of the time. Now, the infectious disease doctors, the Infectious Disease Society of America and others, that most doctors would look at that IgM and they would say, you've been sick too long, you shouldn't be making it, it's a false positive, okay? So the majority of doctors would look at a positive IgM if somebody's been sick for a year or more, and they would say it's a false positive, all right? Instead of saying, wow, that's interesting, I wonder why that happens. Now, most of us that treat Lyme, those of us that are Lyme literate medical doctors, no, this is what happens 80% of the time, and we're not going to discount it, okay? All right, so why does that happen? Well, we have a theory, all right? And the theory has one part to it that is something we know from science, and then there's another part that is a hypothesis, all right? So the one thing we know is that any germ covering is a layer of fat. And into that layer of fat, proteins get stuck, okay? And when we're doing a Western blot, we're looking to see, have you made antibodies against certain proteins that are stuck in that covering of that Lyme germ, all right? So those proteins, there's many kinds. And in Lyme, there's a phenomenon that happens called antigenic variation, or it's called epitope switching, which is those proteins can bury themselves in the fat and pop back out. So sometimes they're exposed to the immune system and sometimes they're not. And they can do it at random. So one protein may go under the fat and then one next to it may not, okay? So the end result is that germ is always changing what it looks like, all right? So the theory part says we know there's epitope switching. Those proteins move around. And then here's what the hypothesis is. What we think happens then is because the germ is always changing what it looks like, the immune system gets tricked into thinking it's seeing a new infection and keeps making the new infection antibodies, all right? So because the proteins are constantly moving around, the germ is always changing what it looks like, the immune system keeps making new infection antibodies. That's why we think people keep making the IgM. So if you have an IgM Western blot that's positive, to me, it says there's proof that you have the Lyme germ living in you, because the only way, if you've been sick for a year or more, that you can keep making IgMs is if you have a living germ in you flipping around its proteins, confusing the immune system, okay? All right. IgGs, on the other hand, as I just said, if it's positive, that doesn't prove a germ is in you, because once we start making IgMs, we will always make, IgGs. Once we start making IgGs, we will always keep making IgGs, okay? Now, to a second part of your question. Yes, when you're pregnant, you will give IgG antibodies from you, will flow across the placenta to your baby, okay? But those should be gone out of the baby by 3 months, maybe up to a year. So the IgGs that they're measuring now are not from you, okay? They're from your daughter. Your daughter's making these, all right? All right, then one more thing. So I mentioned it earlier, don't treat a test, all right? So even if her IgM was positive and she did not have any symptoms, there would be a possibility of a false positive test, okay? And even her IgG, because she doesn't have symptoms, could be a false positive test. So the ability of a test to predict an illness goes up with the number of symptoms we have suggesting that illness, okay? All right? So Linda, I know that's a long-winded response to your question, but I wanted to cover it because people would wonder what an IgM means as well too, okay? So I hope that gave you the information you need. And thank you for that question, and I hope your daughter is really doing well. Thank you. All right. Hello, Susan. Hi, Marty. Thank you for these fabulous webinars. You're welcome. Could you please talk about Teasel root for Lyme, how it works, if it causes herxing, and if while you take it, if you need to take cyst busters and something for biofilms? Also, does it cause yeast? Thank you, Susan. So, Susan, so Teasel, everyone, is an herb that can kill Lyme, okay? So there's Banderol Cemento, but not everyone can take those. And as many of you know, the Banderol Cemento are my go-to herbs for killing Lyme because they work 85 to 90% of the time. But before I discovered Banderol Cemento, I used to work with Teasel. There's another herb I used to work with called Endographis, for instance, okay? And we know about these herbs from the days of syphilis, actually. These herbs come to us out of treating syphilis from before we had antibiotics that we could use to treat syphilis. Syphilis is another spirochete illness, all right? Lyme is a spirochete illness. Syphilis is a spirochete illness. So often we will look towards syphilis, what we learned about treating syphilis, to find treatments that treat Lyme, all right? Teasel, in my experience, helps treat Lyme about maybe 60, 70% of the time. It's not quite as successful as a Banderol Cemento are that work 85 to 90% of the time. Now, I don't have Petri dish experiments to guide me about Teasel, all right? I assume by the fact that people get better that it does treat all three forms of the Lyme germ. I said I assume, but I don't have science proof of that, okay? And I assume because it works 70% of the time that it does get rid of biofilms, all right? Now, hold on just a minute. I want to make a point about biofilms. So there are certain things that I will use to break up biofilms, but all antibiotics, yes, antibiotics can break up biofilms to a degree. So based on the work of Eva Shapi, SAPI, okay, she's the one that brought us the experiments about Banderol Cemento. She's the one that's bringing us more recent experiments about using stevia, for example, okay. Her work, Eva Shapi, that's SAPI, her work about 5 years ago showed that tinidazole breaks down 95% of biofilm. I think doxycycline in her experiments break down biofilm about 70%, okay? So even though I would not use necessarily certain antibiotics to get rid of biofilm, they all break it down to some degree, okay? So I just want to make that point. Can Teasel cause yeast? Yeah, well, any herbs that we use to kill Lyme can also knock down good bacteria in our intestines, but not to the same degree that prescription antibiotics do. So could Teasel cause yeast? Yes, it could, okay? So you still need to do good things like taking lots of probiotics, for instance, to prevent yeast from happening, all right? Or being on nystatin along with your good probiotics, all right? Okay? So anyhow, Susan, I hope that gives you a response there. And thank you for that question. And good luck. All right, so everyone, yeast is a big problem for many with Lyme. And the one thing you want to make sure you do is to take steps to prevent yeast. And the reason you want to take steps to prevent yeast is that too many yeast ultimately cause too many cytokines, okay? And too many cytokines can make you feel bad. So keeping your yeast under control during Lyme treatment is critical, all right? So how are you going to do that? Well, take a look at our chapter here under the germ control and more. There's a whole chapter on yeast. And in this, I talk about, there's an article called Prevent Yeast and Leaky Gut, where I talk about the steps you can take to prevent yeast from occurring, okay? So take a look at that article. It outlines the steps I take in my treatments to help prevent that from happening. Let me go back here again. All right, let's see here. Let me go on here. So if you notice, everyone, I'm showing you articles, and yes, I know you're going to have to subscribe to read them, but I'm also trying to make sure I focus on answering the questions here. But I want to point out where you can get additional information, which is all in that Treat Lyme book, okay? All right. Hello, Lane. Let's see. Does Lyme progress to an autoimmune state? If so, do you treat it differently? That's a great question. So the infectious disease doctors, the Infectious Disease Society of America likes to put its head in the sand and say there's not Lyme disease. And what they claim is that if somebody doesn't get well after antibiotics, that most of this probably is autoimmune illness, okay? Or they claim it's all in your head. Now, they're wrong. They're the ones that are crazy, not people with this illness. But one of their points they raised, could some of this be autoimmune illness? Yeah, they could be. So for some people, a percentage of people with ongoing symptoms of Lyme, it could be due to the Lyme triggering the immune system to attack us, okay, to cause inflammation, to start acting against us as being foreign, okay? That means autoimmune. Our immune systems turn on us, our own tissues, for instance, okay? And I think based on what I see, I think it may happen about 10 or 15% of the time. So one of the things I have is a chapter called Can't Get Better, Do This, which has all the articles in it of steps I advise people to start considering if they're 6 to 9 months into treatment and not getting better. And in Can't Get Better, Do This, there is an article about, I call it immune system attack, okay? In fact, I'll show it to you here real quick, but I'll tell you briefly about it too. So let me just do a quick screen share again. All right, so back in the Treat Lyme book here, I'm going to go back. So I'm in the chapters tab up here, okay? And again, in the germ control and more, there's a chapter called Can't Get Better, Do This. Okay, and as you can see, a person pushing against a wall, because that's what this can seem like at time, okay? And in here, I talk about what are you going to start thinking about next, okay? And one of those is autoimmune illness, all right? And so you want to look at an article I have called On Low-Dose Naltrexone Treatment and Lyme, Does It Help, all right? All right, so that would be, you can find it in this article. Where is it here? Whoa. Oh, there it is. So this article right here, on low-dose naltrexone and Lyme, does it help? Okay. This one is where I talk about how do you treat autoimmune illness and Lyme. Let me go back here. All right, so let me just talk about this. Okay, so there is a treatment called naltrexone, and naltrexone binds to a type of receptor in our cells called an endorphin receptor, which are also narcotic receptors, all right? So naltrexone is a prescription medicine that's manufactured as a 50 milligram pill, and we use it for people with drug overdoses. But what has been discovered is if you use it at low doses, it will provide a blockade of those endorphin sites that wears away in about 4 to 6 hours. So low dose naltrexone means starting at 1.5 milligrams a day and gradually working up to 4.5 milligrams a day, all right? And that provides a temporary blockade of these endorphin sites. Now, what happens when they're blocked? The brain doesn't like that, okay? The brain likes to maintain balance. So the brain sends out a bunch of signals to the cells in the body that make endorphins, telling them to make more. So as the naltrexone wears away, those endorphin receptors get flooded with all this extra endorphins, all right? Now, endorphins do a number of things. Two of the big ones, though, is that they regulate pain and they regulate the immune system, okay? And they can regulate the immune system in two ways. Number one, they can make it more effective. They can make it so it's not so suppressed, okay? But the second thing they seem to do is turn down this autoimmune component, this attacking component, okay? And where we have research that shows low-dose naltrexone can make a difference is in 4 autoimmune conditions. One is in Crohn's disease, which is an autoimmune illness where the immune system starts attacking the lining of the intestines. We also have evidence from multiple sclerosis. We have evidence from fibromyalgia, and we have some evidence from, I believe, from Hashimoto's thyroiditis, if I'm remembering this correctly, okay? And so many of us have tried it out in the world of Lyme, and what I see is it helps with Lyme about 10 to 15% of the time, all right? And usually all you have to do is try it for 2 to 3 months. You're going to know if it's going to help you. And I talk in that article about how to prescribe it, how do you start it. It's an article you could print off and bring to your doctor and see if they'd be willing to try that for you, okay? All right. So I hope that answers your question, Lane. Oh, one more thing about autoimmune illness. There isn't a good blood test that shows if you have autoimmune Lyme. There isn't one, okay? So you have to kind of try it out as something at some point in your treatment. If you're not getting better, trying a trial of low-dose naltrexone might be something to give a try to. Okay? All right. Thank you for that question, Lane. All right. Let's see here. All right. Let's see. For Bartonella, what do you think of using ivermectin rather than Mepron? So I don't think either one of those work for Bartonella. Okay, so Mepron is an antimalarial medicine that we use for Babesia. Ivermectin is an anti-parasite medicine that works on worm kind of parasites, and pinworm, for instance. Okay, now you might have meant Babesia. All right, so Babesia is a blood parasite that lives inside of our red blood cells. And we use antimalarial medicines because malaria is a blood parasite too. All right, so Mepron would work on Babesia, but ivermectin, even though it's anti-parasite, I don't think works on Babesia. I haven't seen it to do that. Okay, Nancy, if you're looking for ways that I treat Bartonella, take a look at the article in the infection treatment plans chapter called Kills Bartonella. And if you're looking for the ways that I treat Bartonella with germ killers, look at the Kills Bartonella article. You'll find that in the infection treatment plan chapter. Okay? All right. Thank you for that question. Good luck to you. Hello, Jenny. Let's see. Hi, Doc. See, for years, been waking at 3 to 4 a.m. with nausea and panic. Have tried everything. Why are Lyme AMs so bad? Huh. It's a good question. I don't know that I've necessarily seen this in a pattern of a lot of my patients, Jenny. So I don't necessarily have a good comment on that one. Just a couple thoughts. So panic attacks sometimes can be part of Babesia. So you would want to make sure that you don't have Babesia. And to do that, take a look at how I diagnose Babesia. There's that article I talked about earlier called How to Diagnose Babesia. Okay, so you might want to consider that. In terms of panic, sometimes using low doses of lithium can help, which is a supplement. Lithium orotate, 5 milligrams, 1 pill 3 times a day can sometimes help with that. Herbally, if you're looking for help with nausea, sometimes taking ginger root. Okay, you can do ginger snacks, or you can boil up ginger tea. Can be helpful for that as well too. Okay, the other thing that can be, in terms of how you make a good ginger tea, get ginger root, just slice it up into like 1/4 inch, 1/8 of an inch slices. You don't need to skin it. Take a handful, put it in boiling water, about 1 to 2 cups of boiling water, boil it for 10 minutes. You got a nice strong ginger tea. You can sip on that. Okay, so that's something to do for nausea, right? Another thing that you can take for the panic that also might help with sleep at night is to use the herb L-theanine. That's L-theanine, Theanine. Theanine is a component of green tea, and it's not caffeine. Okay, I want to be clear about that. It is turned in the brain into a chemical called GABA. And our brain is full of GABA receptors. And if we give more GABA to a GABA receptor, it calms things down. It can put us to sleep. It can keep us in sleep. And if you take enough, it may make it so these panic attacks aren't hitting you as well too, okay? So for that, the way you would do it, it comes as a 100 milligram pill. And you can take anywhere from 200 milligrams to 600 milligrams at bedtime, okay? So I'm going to do a quick screen share here to show you where you can find some of these herbs I'm recommending tonight. Okay, so this is the supplement store that my patients get their supplements from. So it's Marty Ross MD, Terrabrook ND supplements. The reason we have a supplement store is so that we can offer high quality supplements to our patients. Okay, there's a lot of garbage out there, if you will, and garbage in 2 ways. Number one, you want to find products where the manufacturers took the time and the money to pay for the most active ingredients, okay? Secondly, you want to make sure that you're using products that don't have a lot of artificial fillers in them that could harm you. In the world of Lyme, that's really important, all right? So take a look at our suggestions here, because the products we have picked are ones that we find to be safe and to have the greatest likelihood of having active ingredients that will help you, okay? Or that actually do have active ingredients that will help you, all right? So if you're looking for L-theanine, you would use this search tab up here and you would type in L-theanine. And here's some products we have that have L-theanine in them. All right, this is the one I would suggest for you, okay? And then the other one is the lithium. So just type in lithium. And this is the product that we have from Pure Encapsulations. This is the lithium orotate product that we have here, all right? So take a look. And again, I say this, if you're looking for any help with any supplement, you want to make sure you're getting good quality stuff, take a look at what we offer at our store, okay, for the brands that work. And also, if you'd buy from us, that would be great too, because again, that supports the work we're doing here. These articles that I write, as well as the time that I put into these webinars for you as well too. All right, go back here. All right, good luck to you, Jenny. And thank you for that question. Oh, I see, that's right. We answered that already. Hold on here a minute, Linda, let me get rid of that. Hello, Deborah. Hi, Dr. Ross. I've been on Meprin for 5 months, clarithromycin and grapefruit seed extract for a year. I went from no sweating before treatment to sweating of my axilla and sometimes head and AM. Have a cough occasionally. How long do you recommend staying on Mepron? Should I add an antimicrobial? Thanks. Okay, so a Babesia treatment that you're on, clarithromycin and Mepron would be a Babesia treatment. Okay, so you're on an antimicrobial that would work along with the Mepron. Armpit sweating does not necessarily mean Babesia. Usually Babesia is going to be like whole body sweats, okay? Sometimes that sweating of the axilla and the head can also be from too many cytokines being made. In terms of determining if you still need to keep treating Babesia, I wouldn't base it just on the sweats, again, because increased cytokines can give you sweats as well too. I would see if you have a number of the other symptoms of Babesia, and if you did at the beginning and now they're gone, you may be done with treating your Babesia. Generally, a Babesia treatment's about 5 months, okay? All right, so those are some thoughts for you as well too, okay? All right, thanks for that question, Deborah. Hello, Marianne. Let's see. Hi, and thank you for doing these webinars. You're welcome. How long does it generally take to treat Lyme associated with dehydration? I'm not sure quite how to answer that. So I'm not sure that dehydration has any influence. I haven't seen, I should say, that being dehydrated makes any difference in the length of treating Lyme, okay? So if you're prone to dehydration, I don't know that it's going to take you any longer to get over Lyme than somebody that's not prone to dehydration, okay? Now, if your question is, if you have dehydration caused by Lyme, how long will it take before that gets better while you're treating Lyme? I don't know. I don't have enough experience to be able to say either way to you about that, Marianne. All right. Thanks for that question. All right. Hello, Tom. Hold on just a minute. I got to get a sip of water here. Let's see. 2 years ago, I had a tick on me for several days. In a couple weeks, I developed lightheadedness and tinnitus with generalized joint pains. Did a month of amoxicillin, 500 milligrams, then 3 weeks of doxy. The lightheadedness and tinnitus never went away to this day, along with 2 years more of symptoms slowly develop. And there may be a second part to this. Hold on, Tom. Let me see if I can find it. I see another part here, Tom. Let me try this. I have tried many combinations of antibiotics and supplements, but so far no relief from lightheadedness and tinnitus. Also have muscle pain, weakness, joint pain, thoughts. Soon I start minocycline and hydroxychloroquine. Okay, so tinnitus means injury to or involvement of the hearing nerve, okay? The cranial nerve that comes out at the base of the neck that gives you your hearing, all right? So that would be where that can come from. Lightheadedness can sometimes mean that it's a neurologic problem as well too, right? Now, one thing to consider when you have lightheadedness and tinnitus, could you have involvement of Bartonella, for instance, all right? So you may have been adequately treated with various antibiotics for Lyme, and I would want to be clear that you were treated with things that treat spirochete Lyme, intracellular Lyme, and cyst Lyme. And if you're looking for what those things are, okay, you want to make sure you're covering for all three forms of the germ at the same time. There's various combinations that do that. Take a look at the article on Lyme disease, a Lyme disease antibiotic guide that I wrote. You'll find that in the infection treatment plan section, okay? And I describe the various antibiotics, what they do, and I even give you 10 sample treatments of how you would design it so you treat all three forms of the Lyme germ, okay? Minocycline, for instance, treats intracellular Lyme, spirochete Lyme. Many of my colleagues still think that hydroxychloroquine, which is Plaquenil, will treat cyst Lyme. I think they're wrong. There's been competing science that shows it may actually cause more cysts to be made, okay? But there was an old-time thinking saying that it would get rid of cyst. I think that there's science that says otherwise at this point, so I don't use it as a cyst buster, okay? But take a look at my Kills Lyme Germs article. I'm sorry, the Lyme Disease Antibiotic Guide article, which is a free article about the things that might work against your cyst Lyme, okay? Now, how do you figure out if you have too much Bartonella? Well, there's an article I've written about that, but let me tell you. So the symptoms, so I don't use lab testing for Bartonella. I know some of my colleagues do, but the trouble is we estimate about 30 different forms of Bartonella. We only have decent testing for 2. So if you have enough symptoms suggesting Bartonella, I will treat for it. And those symptoms are pain on the soles of the feet, neurologic hypersensitivities like sound sensitivity, touch sensitivity, light sensitivity, tinnitus can be part of that, dizziness could be part of that, okay? Having increased day sweating, having ongoing anxiety, restless legs, which is a feel like your legs have something crawling on them, so you constantly have to move them around. Bladder issues can sometimes be part of that. So do you have burning on urination? Do you have to pee frequently? Can sometimes be part of that. Also, Bartonella can sometimes give you a lot of swollen repeat lymph node problems. Bartonella can do that as well too, okay? So I would look and then having a lot of cognitive problems, although can be part of Lyme, can be also part of Bartonella too. So if you have a number of those symptoms and you still have ongoing tinnitus, ongoing lightheadedness, you want to make sure that you've been on drug combinations that work against Bartonella, all right? And so take a look at the article I've written called Kills Bartonella. You'll find it in the infection treatment plan chapter, okay? Take a look at that article for the various ways that I recommend to treat Bartonella, okay? All right. Thank you for that question, Tom. And good luck to you. All right, let me go back here. I'm just trying to clear out some of these questions here. Okay. Yeah, Benny, we did answer that one already. Go ahead and get rid of that. Hello, Suzanne. Let's see. Hello, I've had acid reflux and a fissured tongue that emerged since starting treatment. I take doxycycline 100 milligrams 2 times and cefprozil 500 milligrams and 20 milligrams of omeprazole. Are these symptoms associated with Lyme or H. pylori? What are your thoughts for treatment? Okay, so there's 2 things that could be going on. So one is you may be getting acid reflux, okay, which is you have acid from your stomach coming up into your food pipe, and at night especially it can roll onto your tongue, which could be giving the fissuring of the tongue, all right? The other thing you could have that's giving you some of the reflux and can be fissuring your tongue is if you have too many yeast. So too many yeast living in our mouth sometimes can fissure the tongue as well too. In terms of what to do for your acid reflux, the omeprazole that you're on is probably being used by your doctors because it causes the stomach to not make acid as much, okay? But your stomach still makes some. And lowering acid does not mean you're not still having some rolling up, all right? So what I like to do when I get into acid reflux is I like to have people take herbal licorice or licorice tablets and a kind of licorice called deglycerated licorice. So it's DEGHLYZERATED, deglycerated licorice, a 300 to a 320 milligram tablet, depends on the brand in terms of what the strength is. And you want to chew 2 of those tablets before meals and before bedtime. And what happens is your spit interacts with chemicals in the licorice to create a microscopic gelatinous coat of your food pipe and of your stomach. All right, now, if you do that long enough, over the course of about a month, that will result in the muscle that's supposed to be squeezing tight between your stomach and your food pipe. It's going to cause that, healing the skin that lines it will allow that muscle to start squeezing tight again and blocking the acid from coming up, okay? So you have to heal that skin. And the trouble is the omeprazole doesn't do anything to heal it. So I would add deglycerated licorice to coat your food pipe, to coat the skin of your food pipe so that you can get the skin to heal, all right? The cause probably of your reflux here is probably the doxycycline. Doxycycline as a side effect can lead to that. So your doctors maybe want to think about taking a break from the doxycycline and maybe switching over to Zithromax as an alternative or Biotoxin as an alternative, okay? Now, you also need to consider if you have too many yeast. And so take a look at the article I've written about too many yeast, okay? How to diagnose too many yeast. I showed that to you earlier for ideas and how you might figure out if you have too many yeast. But if you do, you're going to want to do yeast treatment as well too. And for that, take a look at the article I have written called Kills Yeast, A Brief Guide, where I give you a number of ways to go ahead and treat yeast as well too. All right, in terms of that licorice, I just want to show you because that deglycerated may be throwing you. Let me can be a hard word to remember or to spell. Let me show you a product that I use that is deglycerated licorice. So I'm going to do a quick screen share here. All right, so I'm going to go back here. So our licorice, I think you're going to find licorice in a couple products that we have here, but let's see. Okay, so the licorice product we have, the one I would use is this one called Rhizonate, of which we have 3 different types. But Rhizonate is a deglycerated licorice, okay? This is the one, and I believe it is a 300, let's see here. Yeah, 2 tablets are 760 milligrams, okay? So these are 380 milligram tablets. But you would chew 2 before meals, and then you would also chew 2 tablets before bedtime as well too, okay? All right, so again, you'll find that at the supplement store that I use for my patients. Okay, let me go back here. All right, Suzanne, thank you for that question. Good luck. All right, still working through these. Let's see. That one. Okay, so this is from Nadia. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. I have a bunch of questions, so sorry for that. And thank you in advance. You're welcome. My first question is there a correlation between Lyme and co-infections and endometriosis in women? The answer is yeah. I'll tell you about that in a second. If a woman is too sensitive for hormonal therapy, how can she treat endometriosis in conjunction with Lyme? Okay. So to the first part of your question, so we do see that women with Lyme can have endometriosis, or when they have endometriosis, they have Lyme. There's a gynecologist here in the States that practices south of San Francisco in a place called Los Gatos, named Andrew, I think, I'm blanking on his last name all of a sudden. Anyhow, there was a period of, so his practice is one that specializes in helping women that have severe chronic pelvic pain, okay? So a large number of women that see him have endometriosis. Andrew Cook, that's his name, Andrew Cook. All right, so for a large, the way that he treats endometriosis is instead of burning them, as many doctors will do when they treat them, he likes to actually cut them out or excise them. And there was a period of time that he was taking those lesions and he was sending them over to the lab, and he was asking the lab, what is growing here, okay? And they found, I believe it was around 80% tested positive for Lyme, all right? So a cause of endometriosis can be Lyme. And when you have endometriosis, it might be a suggestion that you have Lyme, okay? Now, in terms of hormonally, what's going to be a better way of going? I don't have good options for you here. Any of the standard ways of treating with hormones can help, but if you're not having help with that, I don't have a good recommendation, unfortunately. The main thing is treat your Lyme, and that probably ultimately will help with the endometriosis over time, okay? All right. Good luck to you with that, Nadia. Let's see here. Hi, Linda. Let's see. I have 4 mutations in the detoxification processes. How does this interact with Lyme? What is the best way to monitor if these mutations are impacting my health? Linda, it's kind of hard for me to say specifically what you should do without knowing what the exact mutations are, okay? There's one that I do write about, which is called an MTHFR mutation. And there is an article that I have written that you can take a look at that. Let me quickly show you where you'll find that, okay? But beyond that, without knowing what the other ones are, I can't specifically comment, okay? Let me do a quick screen share here again. I'll show you where you can find the one on the MTHFR. So MTHFR is probably the more common mutation that affect many people with Lyme or without Lyme. And you can find that, let's see here. So take a look on the in the problem solved section of the chapters under this detoxification. Okay, and so you're going to find it on the one called MTHFR detoxification on Lyme bite. Okay, so this one tells you the steps I would take to figure out if you happen to have it, and also it will tell you, there's a video here that you can listen to as well, okay, that explains it. But I tell you how to figure out if you have it, as well as the steps to take to deal with it too, okay? All right, let me go back here. All right, Linda, thank you for that question. Okay, Nadia, I don't know that I'm going to take every one of your questions because I also got some other people that look like they have written many questions too. I will do one more of yours now. If I have time later, I may come back and hit some more of them, but here's one more. All right, so number 2, if a person is experiencing chest pain with erratic heartbeats, burning around the chest area, shoulders, and arms, with skin getting red from time to time and showing little red spots, what is this? How can they alleviate the symptoms, okay? So erratic heartbeats, little red blood blisters under the chest or under the skin sometimes can be part of Babesia, all right? Take a look at the article I've written about how to diagnose Babesia to see if there's enough other symptoms that suggest you might have Babesia, Nadia. Those would be my thoughts for you on that one, okay? All right. Thank you for that question. All right, let's see here. Hi, Jackie. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. Your new website looks great. Thank you. I've got more. I'm trying to make it more user-friendly and functional, and I'm discovering there's still some problems on it, okay? So You may see some new design options in the next weeks ahead as I try to tackle those. But anyway, I'm glad to hear that. Thank you. Let's see. I have also used some of the herbals and have found cat's claw cemento and banderol, along with another ABAP formula, to be the best options for me. I have had Babesia and Bartonella. Let me see if I can find the second part of your question there. Babesia and Bartonella with severe neurologic symptoms that have been hard to deal with. I'm much better, but still have minor relapses. I have also had some good luck with stevia extract. I still have some other issues, though, which I'm not sure if Lyme or a side effect of the damage from it, or something else. Or something else entirely. One is that I have some issues with my throat that are pretty severe, strange pains, and thyroid nodules that did not respond to anything, including thyroid supplements. I have had to have scans for these. These issues with my throat seem to control the rest of my gut and swallow issues. I react to a lot of things, including amino acids for sleep, etc., which further aggravate my throat. So everything depends on how my throat reacts to it now. My gastro wants to do endoscopy, and I'm also doing an MRI. I don't know if these symptoms are Lyme related or not, and that is my question. Okay, so Jackie, so I understand. It's a long question, which is why I had to post it in 4 parts, because unfortunately this webinar doesn't allow us the ability to write long questions. So I appreciate you had to write that in 4 parts. So let me talk to you about a few things you might want to consider with your throat, okay? So when you get treated for Lyme, as you know, when you use antibiotics, and as you know I talk about many times in my webinars, there is the possibility of developing too many yeast, okay? So whether you're on herbal antibiotics or prescription antibiotics, they can decrease the good bacteria that live in your intestines, okay? And your food pipe and your throat, all right? So one of the symptoms that can suggest too many yeast living in us is if we have swallowing difficulties or pain in our throat or in our food pipe as we swallow. So it could be that you have too many yeast. I want you to be aware of that, okay? The other clue that makes me wonder about too many yeast is you have medicine sensitivity. So I find that people have medicine sensitivities also if they have too many yeast. Keep in mind that too many yeast living in your intestines and up here, especially in the intestines, if it's up here, it's going to be in your intestines too, okay? And too many yeast in your intestines cause your immune system to make cytokines, which make you feel bad, but also too many yeast in your intestines can trigger something called leaky gut syndrome, okay? So I'm going to do a brief description of leaky gut syndrome so you understand why it is other things you might be sensitive to, all right? So your intestines, there's the inside of the intestines, there's one layer of cells, then there's immune cells, and then there's your blood vessels down here, okay? So you've got inside of the intestines, a layer of cells, immune cells, blood vessels. Okay, the way that things are supposed to get from the inside of the intestines into your blood cells down here is they're supposed to be absorbed, taken into the inside of these cells, all right? And that's the normal intestines where these cells touch up against each other very tight. Now, so what happens is fully digested food broken down into amino acids and small fats and small sugars get absorbed into these cells. They get passed through these immune cells and then into your blood vessels, all right? All right, now, if we get yeast growing here, these cells will plump up and pull apart. And now you got gaps. So you get partially digested food that comes through. And what does it hit first? All of these immune cells, okay? In fact, 60 to 70% of our immune system lines the gut. Okay, that is the storehouse of the immune system. And if it's things that aren't supposed to be getting through, these immune cells will release histamines, they'll make cytokines, etc. And so now you start reacting to all kinds of things, okay? That's what leaky gut syndrome does, all right? So I would wonder, do you have too many yeast? Okay, now, if the GI doctor was to look inside, he might see yeast, but he might miss it because he doesn't know to look for it, okay? He would see the obvious thing, which is white patches, all right? But you may not have white patches. You may just have redness that is caused by too many yeast living there too. So one thing you might want to consider is trying a yeast treatment. And to read more about what yeast treatment to try, take a look at the article called Kills Yeast, a Brief Guide. You'll find that in the Infection Treatment Plans chapter, okay? And also for more clues, if you have too many yeasts going on, take a look at the How to Diagnose Yeast, which is you'll find in the How to Diagnose chapter, okay? I'll quickly show you those in a minute, all right? So those are some thoughts I would have for you. The other thing that can still give you a lot of throat sensitivities and swallowing difficulties sometimes can be injury from Lyme and or Bartonella to the nerve that causes our throat to work, but I'm not hearing that so much here, all right? So based on the way you wrote your question and what I'm hearing, I wonder about yeast. I would go looking for that or try to treat for it, all right? So let me just show you two things. I'll show you quickly about that. All right, so I'm going to go into the Treat Lyme book again. I'm going to go up here to the chapters, and in the germ control and more section, you're going to look at yeast. All right, so take a look here. There's the chapter called A Silent Problem, Do You Have Yeast? There's an article I've written about killing yeast, a brief guide. And then in terms of helping prevent yeast, my favorite probiotic is this one. I have a whole article about my favorite one there too, okay? So take a look at the yeast chapter, okay? I think it may pertain to you, okay? Let me go back here. All right, so thank you for that question, Jackie, in multiple parts. I appreciate that. Let me get rid of that. Okay, let's see here. Hello, Jack. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. I recently had an MRI neuroquant done and had Lyme score equal 5 out of 8 and mold 2 out of 4. Can you tell me what this means and where I can locate the normal ranges for each of the areas measured in a neuroquant? Thanks. So everyone, neuroquant is a type of MRI that can study parts of the brain. And there are certain changes that we might see that would indicate Lyme or indicate mold toxicity, okay? And beyond that, I'm not the greatest expert on this one, Jack. It's one of those areas that's become a new area, and it's one of those areas I've been intending to look into a bit more so that I might write an article about it as well too. So I'm putting that on the list of things that I can get more knowledge about. So beyond being able to tell you that it can look for Lyme changes that you might see in the brain, beyond that, I don't have enough specifics for you. It's not my area of expertise at this point, but it will be. It'll be one of those things I'll be adding more into my articles, okay? All right. Thank you for that question, Jack. All right, so everyone, that's it for me for tonight. That's been about an hour and a half here. Obviously, I wasn't able to get through all the questions. Tomorrow, again, you're going to get an email from me saying, guess what? The recording's ready from tonight, okay? And so I hope to have that out to you by around 6 o'clock or so Seattle time. That's my intention. We'll see if that happens, okay? And then the other thing that I hope to have in tomorrow's webinar or in tomorrow's email is the sign up for July. I'll have figured out when I'm going to be doing the July series. There'll be 3 that I do in July. It will either start the first or second week in July. I haven't decided yet, again, if I'm going to take that webinar off the week of July 4th, okay? So to all of you, I guess we're in full swing of summer now. I'm glad to have seen so many people here tonight. And I look forward to helping you in webinars in the future. This was great. I loved your questions tonight. Good luck, everyone, in your recovery. Here in a second, I'm going to take you over. I'm going to redirect you over to treatlyme.net, the Treat Lyme book. Again, if you're interested in subscribing, I appreciate the support. To subscribe, read on any article that you want. And if you need to be subscribed to read it, there's going to be a screen in those articles that say subscribe. Click on that blue ticket. That's how you subscribe to the Treat Lyme book. And I appreciate any support that you give for that. All right. Thanks, everyone. Good night.